So the whole goal, essentially, from as you mentioned at the start, is to get humans to be multi-planetary. It's Elon Musk and SpaceX aren't the only people who believe that. It's talked about by a reasonable amount of people as something that we like need to do. Why, for like the layman coming at this, is that the case? Like, what is so crucial about becoming multi-planetary? Like, surely we should worry about this planet first before we go like jetting off to other ones.
And I think Elon would absolutely agree with that. And one of the reasons he founded Tesla or was a part of Tesla was because he felt it was important to break humanity's addiction to fossil fuels. And so if you can build an electric car and then you can get your energy from the sun, then all of a sudden you've tackled one of the biggest problems facing the planet. But he also has existential fears. I think it was Lord Martin Rees, who like 2 decades wrote a book about how there's sort of all these threats facing humanity, right? You've got the obvious ones like nuclear weapons, climate change could destabilize society and civilization ultimately. You've got the threat of biogenic weapons. And then, you're not sure, like humanity's existence is confined to this one world. And it's fairly precarious. And so if something bad happens to the planet or the life on it, it's game over. And that's probably not going to happen in our lifetime, certainly, but it could. And Elon is like, well, I think humanity ought to have a backup plan. And that doesn't mean we ought to trash Earth and all the rich people should get on a rocket ship and leave. It just means that, he and I think this way, and I think other people do, think that humanity's destiny lies among the stars. And so, one day, we're going to go forward and find Earth-like worlds around other stars, and we'll figure out some way to get there. And whether it's generational ships or cryogenic freezing or faster than light travel, who knows, right? We don't know, but we're never going to get there unless we take the first steps. And in Elon's mind, the best place for humans to make their first step off Earth is on Mars. And so that's why he's been focused. I mean, he did the numbers, and there are other places you could think about in the solar system where maybe it would be a little bit more hospitable for humans, like maybe in caves on the moon, or maybe on Titan where there's a pretty thick atmosphere, or maybe one of the moons around Jupiter, or maybe in the atmosphere of Venus. But in terms of terrestrial planets, Mars is relatively close as planets go. And it's got some building blocks to work with in terms of a very thin atmosphere and water ice. So it's far from ideal. It's a very hostile place to try to survive, but you got to start somewhere.
So one of the things that I was speaking to a guy who Houston Wade, who's involved in some planning for like space mining projects. I was speaking to him last week, and one of the things that he was sort of very keen to emphasize about space exploration is just how bad not being on Earth is for humans. The radiation in space, the different, like the lack of atmosphere, the lack of gravity. Even like down to like the soil content of like different not very hospitable chemicals on Mars. How much thought do SpaceX give to how long humans can actually survive outside of planet Earth?
Right. So if you're going to go to Mars, you've got to make Mars more habitable. And initially that probably means living inside of domes, and then figuring out adaptability or trying to make, ultimately terraforming it over decades or centuries. It's an enormous challenge. And I think their philosophy is that all of that is, just chatter. It's just a discussion. It's not real until we have a way to get humans to Mars. And so the first step to making that a reality is to build the transportation system, right? Because right now we have no way to safely get humans to Mars, let alone back. We don't have habitats for them on the surface of Mars. Humans, the Apollo missions, those astronauts were outside of Earth's gravity well, for about a week. They were in deep space for about a week at most. And it's, Mars missions are years. So you got to have some way to get people there before you can ask, well, what the hell are you going to do on the surface of Mars, or how are you going to survive there? And so, he's building this Starship vehicle in South Texas, which is kind of, they did the Falcon 1 rocket and the Falcon 9, the Falcon Heavy. It's the next iteration, this much larger launch vehicle, fully reusable. And the idea is that they'll build the rocket and the spacecraft, figure out how to get people to Mars. And then, once we get to Mars, you can start to sort of figure things out. And yeah, it's going to be hard. But pioneers are pioneers, right? There are some people, maybe it's not me, I have a pretty comfortable life here in Houston, Texas, but there's some people who want to be out there pushing forward the frontier, and learning to live on sort of the edge of the world. So, to begin answering those questions, you've got to figure out how to get there. And that's what SpaceX is. Ultimately, it's a transportation company.
So they're just the idea is that, yeah, you have to build stage one to get to the next questions. Essentially, you have to unlock the first stage before you can get to the questions about how we're like going to live there long term. Is there any talk of like artificial gravity stuff? Because I've seen some startups like talking about this, but I've never seen it being like seriously discussed.
So Mars is one nice thing about Mars is it has about a third of Earth's gravity. So there is enough gravity there, we think, that human bodies could adapt to it fairly easily. And that's one good thing about Mars. Now, the question is, do you want to have artificial gravity on the way to Mars, so your bones don't get weaker and you have other health effects from that, which we've seen on the International Space Station? I think SpaceX's answer is we should get there as fast as we can. So 5 or 6 months. But that's definitely an issue. And where artificial gravity, I think, comes into more play is there's also an idea espoused by Jeff Bezos and other people that no, we ought not to be living on planets because other planets in the solar system aren't that good compared to Earth. We ought to be living in these large orbital habitats, and those would spin to have some kind of artificial gravity. But the fact is, there's been very little research done by NASA or any other space agency or private company on artificial gravity. So it's, from a technological standpoint, we've got a ways to go.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, or sign up to our mailing list. Thanks a lot to our sponsor, ExpressVPN, the #1 most trusted VPN. Get lightning fast connectivity with servers in 160 locations across 94 countries. Keep your browsing privacy safe with ExpressVPN and get a 35% discount on 12 months of ExpressVPN when you follow the link in the description below. Don't forget, my book is now out and available to order on Amazon and on bookshop.org. That's Brexit, the Establishment Civil War. And most importantly, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.